Please welcome our panel, Building a Tooling Strategy with Humans in the Loop, with Jay Natarajan from iMerit, Ivan Lee from Datasaur, and Eran Shlomo from Dataloop.
Hi, and welcome to our panel, Building a Tooling Strategy with Humans in the Loop. The fun part of my job is that I get to interact with experts in the industry, and we brought two of the very best here today to talk about the tooling ecosystem and specifically about how to take your projects into a scalable mode and to be able to use the right tools and make the right decisions to build scalable AI projects. We'll jump straight in with Ivan Lee, CEO of Datasaur. Ivan, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and then maybe provide some insight into what are the current trends in the NLP ecosystem?
Yeah, thanks for having me here today, Jay. So as mentioned, I'm the CEO here at Datasaur. A bit of background on myself. I studied computer science. I've been an AI PM for the past decade. Prior to this, I spent hundreds of millions of dollars on gathering labeled data. So I was on the other side of the table. And it was through that experience that I decided we needed better tooling for this. So Datasaur is focused entirely on NLP. And over the last couple of years, we've had the fortune of kind of viewing how NLP is used across many different industries and across the world. And the really interesting takeaway for me here is that NLP seems to be the most mature of all the AI technologies. It's used in everything from e-commerce to legal contracts to chatbots to even use cases like menu understanding at restaurants. Right. So while there's been a lot of hype around the R&D and all that's being developed in the labs for AI, NLP seems ready for prime time. And it's something that's being deployed in production at a lot of companies for a lot of different use cases. So we're really excited to see how NLP is being used in a lot of different languages and also for all this wide, diverse variety of use cases.
Thanks. And our other guest is Eran Shlomo, CEO of Dataloop, always entertaining, always insightful. Eran, I want to ask you the same question, a little bit about Dataloop's evolution from being a heavily computer vision focused data tool to your recent journey into data pipelines and data management as well, and why you see that as being important in this industry.
Yes, so thanks for having me. And I'm Eran, I'm the CEO of Dataloop. Been doing machine learning data around in the last decade, started at Intel and now doing it in Dataloop. And Dataloop was founded on three pillars. The first pillar was that we're going towards a future of data development. That means that in order to develop machine learning product and AI products, you'll have to invest in data sets development rather than code or model development. Second pillar was that humans are in the critical path. That means that information or intelligence is essentially a human thing. And that means that labeling will always be part of that. And the last pillar that was made back then, some folks really annoyed, was that the future of AI is about humans and machines constantly creating a feedback loop of data that create essentially the learning or evolution process as things are changing. Now, if you think about it, the data pipeline, if you think about Dataloop in the first early days, we did the labeling tools, etc. Then we added the data management. Or if you think about it, we focused on the first two pillars. But spinning that loop is essentially the data pipelines. Creating that feedback loop is this data pipeline product. And essentially by launching this new product this quarter, we're essentially, if you think about it, we're completing our vision or the full product. From the technical perspective, think about it that labeling or AI or products today are kind of developed as a batched process, like a project, like even you guys, you get like a bunch of data, go label that instead of a continuously streaming process, always learning, always improving. And data pipelines is exactly the transition from batch to stream.
I think that's a really good way of looking at it. I think even our work together over the last few years We've solved so many customer problems. No one's really, worried about whether we can draw bounding boxes anymore. The conversation is definitely moving to the next level. So along those lines, I mean, given that you guys have already products that have been used heavily in sort of, I would say, data annotation 101, the challenge I would like to throw to you is to kind of introspect from all of our joint learnings of customers, projects, and our teams working on the tools, and try to identify for our audience, maybe Ivan first, but what kind of gaps do you see in the tooling ecosystem to scale this journey, this human plus machine journey? What are the gaps you think need to be addressed in the next couple of years to actually make that happen?
Sure. So I think the keyword in that question, Jay, is how to really scale this out, right? It's very clear when speaking with these customers from around the globe, everyone starts at the same place, which is spreadsheets. We all know how to use them, and you can just upload the data and start labeling very quickly, right? And yeah, if you've got 1,000 lines to do that, then you can just use spreadsheets for that. But the question is, how do you begin to scale that process out? And that's where I think the tooling ecosystem has needed to adapt and evolve around this as AI becomes more prevalent and as the workflows become that much heavier and that much more intense, right? So a part of it is what Eran was talking about earlier with the existing, with integrating to data pipelines, right? And making sure that it's a stream. Part of it too is leveraging existing capabilities. I see too many customers starting from scratch, labeling things like Starbucks and Saturday and London manually. That's such a waste of time and money, right? Because we've advanced so much in NLP, we know what those things are. So you should be able to leverage existing models and pre-annotate and pre-label some of this work so that you're not manually doing that over and over again. But really the advanced piece that we're seeing a lot more interest in these days is QA capabilities. This is, again, a lesson learned by each and every single person and every team where they try having just one person do it, right? But then that's not going to be enough. There's human error. There's a lot of ambiguities. You need to remove the subjectivity and the bias. So it's really important for whatever tool you choose to have the QA capabilities, the reporting, the dashboarding, everything you would expect out of a premier SaaS product these days. And so that's where we need to modernize. And that's really the key to scaling up that process effectively.
That's something that doesn't get covered as often, I think, as the actual, what I like to call the metal underneath the tools. This whole aspect of workflow management and dashboards and reporting. Eran, you know that we've been very vocal on this topic. I know you've focused a lot around this. Do you want to address the same question, but more from a point of view of what is on top of the metal? What makes it a really, really sophisticated enterprise labeling solution?
Yes. If you think about it, the way I try to figure things out is actually asking where we're going to be in 3 or 5 years from now, and you can see it already today, the pain points, and when we work together, we see those pain points. And I'll give you an example of such thinking. One of the patents that we've just got approved to, I say that, and usually when I'm saying it to data scientists, they're telling me that I'm a fraud. I'm lying. I'm telling them, listen, we can predict data quality issues before we label the data. And they're saying, how can you predict data quality issues before you label the data if I haven't even developed the model? And I said, okay, that means if you haven't even developed the model, that means that the data is bad. I said, but you haven't even labeled the data. And I said, okay, so the next logical thing means that the instructions are bad. And if you think about it, that many of the data issues are actually starting with human-to-human communication, where those AI leads or domain experts try to explain your guys what does that mean that you want to have these marking or these labeling in this specific shape and form. And this is where many of the mistakes born. Starting analyzing the instruction or the human-to-human communication is where you should start when you want to, if you care about data quality, rather than the machine or the tooling. That's example for how do you go very deep, quoting you on the metal. Next one is, one of the things that we've noticed is that there is a correlation to the human behavior to the data quality. What does that mean? Think about it that when somebody spends some time on an image or a piece of item that is significantly, 2, 3, 4x than others, then it means that something went bad there. Maybe it's a human behavior, that person was distracted at that point, or maybe that data point is very special, but something went there. And I'll tell you that if you go take a look on the times, on the human behaviors layered on top of the data, you will get to discover a whole new world of data quality information, valuable information, and we've just now started releasing that, and you guys already got a preview on how these things look like on these type of metadata and data. And I think that's kind of give you the sentiment of how we think and where do we see the future. The last part, which I think is critically important, is if you think about it, I really like to think about the data as code. That means that everything we're familiar with software development will have some kind of the equivalent in the data world. And that means that if you think about it, the most basic thing in code is that you have a debug build and you have production or release build. And you should expect that training data will have a debug-like training data where you're optimized to quality, labeling, explainability, all less of ambiguity, etc. But then you'll have labeling or workflows that are optimized for production, which mean cost and speed. So that's another thing that you should think about. It's two kind of labeling flows: one optimized for cost, the other one optimized for quality.
So yeah, this is helpful because we had customers talk to us about there's data which is underlying everything, and then there's information contained in the data which is generally what you're talking about, revealing through analysis, and then there's insight on top of everything, which provides the cream on top of the layers and really helps you take your model to the next level. We focused a lot of our conversations in the past around edge cases and around how to scale edge cases so that human intelligence can help come back into the model in production. And Ivan, what do you think the tooling ecosystem needs to provide so that becomes like a virtuous cycle?
Yeah. So let me answer that question by actually building on what Eran was saying there, where I think a critical error that a lot of people make their first time around, and this is one that I learned from my own experience at Yahoo and Apple previously, is that we underestimate what these labeling tasks require. It is really easy to get that first 70, 80% correct, right? Most of our customers come to us and they already have a model with like a 0.8 F1 score, right? 85% precision. That was the easy part. By the time you are really feeding the second batch of data, the third batch, et cetera, now you're looking for incremental improvements upon that. But those are the ones that the machine couldn't learn the first time around because there's a lot of ambiguity, a lot of edge cases. So what it really takes is I recommend every product manager, every engineering manager who is monitoring these tasks and creating these tasks to sit down and spend time, maybe labeling 100 examples on your own, because it becomes very clear and very apparent exactly where the edge cases lie. And so that's where you have to build those better labeling guidelines. You need to be able to direct the workforce to align with your understanding of the world, right? One of my tasks previously was to rate what was appropriate or inappropriate for family audiences. Mm-hmm. But this is such a subjective task, and every company has a different kind of definition of what is inappropriate, right?
Sure.
So I thought I could just rip off like rated PG-13 or rated R, but every company has to really dig in, look at those edge cases and identify, where do I want to draw the line, right? And how do I want to direct the labeling of the data to address that?
I would say, Jay, that if you have to take one recommendation out of this session, just listen to what Ivan was just saying. I've seen so many cases where people are sending data without actually being, I'm calling it being intimate with your data. That means that that you have to be familiar, feel it, feel the pain of what the people on the other side needs to deal with. And I don't think ever I had a chance to work on the data without, after working on a few hundreds of examples, without learning new things, without actually being familiar with new refinements of the guidelines. And I would say, you know, if you want to skip everything here, skip everything, but just take just this one tip. Don't send data for labeling before actually doing a few hundreds of examples yourself, which, by the way, 99% of the cases doesn't happen, because some folks feel that it's easier to just tell people rather than do it themselves. It's pretty Sisyphic and hideous task, right?
I think that's fair. I think we also emphasize context. What seems obvious to one person may not be to another. Or to use Ivan's example, appropriate content for a Disney Channel would be completely different than appropriate content for CNN, you know, for their audiences. So the ability to provide context is super important. I think one challenge I'll throw at you is, should engineers and practitioners, should they care about scalability? At what point? Is it too early to worry about it when you're just trying to get your model off the ground? Or when should these factors start to weigh in on your decision making?
I would, there you go. You want to go?
Please go ahead, Eran.
I would say just like when you're writing software, some scalability issues you can skip from day one, but others, if you skip them, you will find yourself paying extremely expensive later on. Technical debt that can actually kill the product or kill the project. So the real question here is how do you separate those technical debts that you can actually allow yourselves to skip than those that are actually a potential of being a project killer? And I would say that a good workforce, trained workforce, a good tooling, good infrastructure, stable data flows infrastructure, those things that you should be investing from day one. Now, your models, your ontologies, your definitions will change along the way. That's okay. Right. But having the team, keep in mind, this is just like software, having the team working together as a monolith from day one is probably the most important thing you would do. Just like you wouldn't imagine on developing software product without having developers in place. Right. The same goes here.
That's helpful. I like the idea of data debt as analogous to technical debt. How about you, Ivan?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I think there was a quote that came out of an AI panel last week where you have to think about this, like the original POC might be 6 weeks, right? And in 6 weeks, you can just prove the value of AI and kind of get the budget, get the buy-in from the organization that you should build this out, right? But then 6 months is what it'll take to get the real first production model. And 6 years is how long you'll be updating and maintaining that. And I really like that framework because maybe, hey, for the first 6 weeks, just get something off the ground, right? Like whatever it takes, even if it's you and your engineers just labeling by hand, take care of that. But once you're really committing to this, you know, again, using that same analogy, you have to think of it like sitting down and architecting in advance and knowing that you're committed to this for years to come. So now you have to think about, okay, what is our process? How do we get to the first 1 million data points? How do we get to 10 million over the next few years?
Right. Okay. So maybe 20 seconds, quick shoot out each of you, final takeaways, talk a couple of words of wisdom for our viewers. Ivan?
Okay. So yeah, my word of wisdom is, yeah, jump in, start labeling the data yourself. You really won't have a understanding or be able to empathize with exactly how this all works out until you attempt doing this yourself and create those labeling guidelines on your own.
Eran?
My take would be that think that you're building a single machine. Some of it is human or biological parts, others have digital parts, and it's about enjoying the efficiency of machines, meaning speed and cost, while keeping the wisdom and the accuracy of people. And think about it like as a single process rather than two different processes.
Those are pretty good takeaways. Thank you both for extremely insightful views and extremely balanced inputs. And hope that was helpful to the audience. Thanks, Ivan. Thanks, Eran, again.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you all.